ahead and scream at me, but I think Can I Play With Madness is a freaking brilliant pop song. And people go, pop song? Yes, it's a pop song. Iron Maiden has hook-heavy songs. They are craftsmen, and they make really good music. And when they keep it under like 5 minutes, you have a radio-friendly hit. That song is absolutely killer. You know, but speaking of killer, so that Killers record, I'm not sure if you were around when this, but there was a van in Meriden that had the whole Killers painted on the side. And I remember that would like drive by, and I'm like a kid, you know what I mean? Would scare the crap out of me. Like, Eddie was scary.
Yeah, he was scary. Yeah.
But I will say this, Carlos, if it happens, okay, if I've never seen Iron Maiden either. If Iron Maiden comes anywhere in the Northeast on the Senjutsu tour, I will go with you.
Sounds good.
We will go see Iron Maiden, because I just think that you have to see them. And even hearkening back to the earlier part of our conversation, and was it Roccolo and
Cocolo and Rockero.
Rockero. Yeah. I think of the biggest market that still exists for metal is South America. Yep. That is the biggest market, and Iron Maiden tomorrow at the 11th hour could say, we're doing a stadium in pick a country in South America. It'll be packed like 100,000 people, like overnight. Oh, yeah. Just amazing. And keeping metal alive, keeping metal absolutely alive, where in other places it's kind of gone dormant. So, you know, props to South America for keeping metal going.
Yeah. So the Dead Milkmen was my first punk band, and even that, I mean, they were a different type of punk. I mean, they were just more like they weren't heavy, you know, they were just silly. They talked about stupid things.
Yep.
And they weren't even that loud. It wasn't like that, and that wasn't even their first album. That was just the first album that I got exposed to. But I remember I wore that out. Like I knew every song, all the lyrics to every song. And I remember just like annoying my parents with it, because there was swears and stuff in it, but there was nothing like over the top or anything about it. You know, it's just silly stuff, you know. So they'd throw it in the car, in the cassette player. And so that was the album that I like pretty much wore out, and even into like high school, because I was still listening to a lot of hair metal. The Poisons, the Cinderellas, the Stripers. You know, we both are big Striper fans. That was a band my mom obviously, she
approved.
She kind of approved. You know, she didn't like the music or the sound or anything, but it was too heavy for her. But she kind of approved, and so I was still listening to that type of stuff. And in 8th grade. Was it 8th grade? No, probably 7th grade is when I started skateboarding. And that was because, and probably the reason why a lot of kids our age, a lot of people our age started skateboarding was because of the movie Back to the Future. Mm-hmm. That's why I started skateboarding. My first skateboard was a Baraflex Back to the Future paint splatter skateboard.
Really?
With the tail guard, the rails, and the nose guard.
Nice.
It was something that you could buy at like Zayre's, Caldor's, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I didn't care. It was my first real skateboard. So once I realized, or was told by those that had the Power Peraltas and the Santa Cruzes and stuff, and that was like in 8th grade. In 7th grade, no one had those yet. At least not anyone that I knew. No one in our grade did. But in 8th grade, Jamie Service and Todd or John Richards, Danny Tortorella. I don't know if you remember that guy.
I do know him.
Danny Tortorella, Rick Pelletier. All those guys had the Power Pro the boards and stuff. And those were the guys, like you said, that were, like I said, that were listening to the punk rock music, you know, and the alternative music also at that time, like REM.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like REM wasn't punk, but it was still indie enough that they weren't like, they had some hits, but they weren't plastered on the radio like they were back in the 90s and in the early 2000s,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
which I had no problem with that. I love REM, you know. But that's what those guys were listening to.
So Carlos, my first skateboard, by the way, was also like immediately shat on within like 6 months of having it. It was the Marty Jimenez Jinx, the Vision Jinx, had the big bat on it.
And there's nothing. It's a Vision, man. Vision
I know, but like all of a sudden,
it wasn't the cool Vision. It wasn't the Psycho Stick.
Right.
It wasn't the Mark Gonzalez.
You know, and I mean, I had the Venture trucks. Like, I mean, I had the Speedballs. I had all of it, but then I had my own custom grip tape. Like, you know, cut my own designs, all this stuff. But then, like you're saying, oh, well, the Santa Cruz came out, and you know, and of course, and he's still going strong. That freaking Tony Hawk board comes out.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody had to have that. It was like that was the thing to get. I mean, to think that all these years later, he's still going strong and hasn't aged, apparently. But yeah,
and it's crazy. Well, you had a more of a acceptable first skateboard than I did. I mean, my first like real skateboard after that Veriflex one was I was a Santa Cruz guy.
Yeah.
Like I was fascinated. And I guess it makes sense being like a fan of Kiss and the makeup and all that stuff. I was fascinated and drawn to the Rob Roscott board, the Rob Roscott face board. That was my dream board. I ended up that was like, and that was the board. That was my first, like, yeah, I ordered it from California Cheapskates. I had to wait like a month for it to get. And I was just like, it was awful waiting because there weren't too many places. You had Meriden Bike, you had Wallingford Bike, and that's about it. And I think you had
Mickey Finn's up on the Turnpike, right?
Did they sell skateboards?
I thought they did.
I know they had there was a place in Sartorius or something like that in Avon, but there wasn't like it wasn't, you know, you were crapped on if you skated. You were crapped on if you were into punk. And it's funny, and we'll eventually get into this once we start getting into our high school years and into our, you know, our colleges. So we'll segue into that. But, you know, so skating and my introduction and liking that punk music kind of went hand in hand.
Okay, so we're going to end this episode of the podcast right here, but Carlos will be back next week as we delve in more to the independent rock, punk, and hardcore scene of the early to mid 90s and some of the bands that we had enjoyed, some of the shows that we'd seen. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at StuckPodX. You can follow me on Facebook at the Stuck in the Middle Podcast. Or you can email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to share it, family, friends, or anyone that you think might enjoy this little slice of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And you can also leave 5-star reviews, like, and subscribe to the channel. So until next time, as always, later, slackers.